you do have an opportunity to potentially meet donor siblings or families that, conceived using the same donor as you a lot earlier. And again, even if it's sharing photos here and there, again, it's an option. Another thing is the resources available. There are children's books, there are adult
Mm-hmm.
books, there are parenting
Yes.
books all about donor conception. There's your podcast, Lisa. Like, this is
Thank you.
amazing.
Yes.
This is such a wonderful resource that neither one of our moms had. And again, they
Mm-hmm.
did a great job, but a lot of it was just going by the seat of your pants and doing the best that you could and making the best decision for your child that you can.
From the Building Your Family community, this is the Building Your Family podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Schumann, author, researcher, and reproductive medicine therapist. As the leading destination for support and education for people using reproductive medicine to grow their families, we cut through the noise to provide you with research-based information, effective and actionable strategies, and the support you need to empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life and build the family of your dreams. We look forward to seeing you inside. Welcome to today's episode of the Building Your Family podcast. And today I am so tickled pink because Kiara Ray Shu is back, but she is with her sister, her genetic sister, Jana, who you will meet in a moment. And just to review, if you haven't met Kiara yet, she is on our podcast I guess it was maybe a year ago. And she's done such amazing things with her life, which you'll hear about as well. But she's authored a book called Chosen Family. And in our previous podcast, she talks a lot about how she decided how to write the book in a way that was really meaningful to her. She talks about her donor and her family and how she's named people and what it really means to have a chosen family. So I encourage you to get the book. I encourage you to watch that podcast and then tune into this one because this is so interesting. So welcome, Kira, and welcome, Jana. Really appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. So excited to be back.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Kiara. It's great to be here with you today.
I really appreciate you both being here, and I think it's going to be so interesting to talk to you about both of your journeys, to meet each other, to understand your place in the world, being donor conceived, but also being siblings. So maybe we can give a quick recap to the audience, Kira, about your story and how you learned about being donor conceived and what led you to write your book.
Absolutely. So just a reminder for those who haven't seen the first podcast that I was on, or for those that it's been a little while. But again, my name is Kiara Ray Shu. I am sperm donor conceived. My mom, Nikki, decided to have my brother Logan and then myself using a donor. She was nearing 40 and realized that she wanted a family. She wanted to build her family. She wanted children. And she realized that she could do it by herself. So she did it back in the 90s. She had my brother, and then she had me. And we really have always known that we were donor conceived. She told us right from the beginning, and our story evolved as we got older. And then when I was in my 20s, my early 20s, I decided that I was curious to see if I had any siblings out there. So that's what really led me to pursue finding donor siblings, how I met Jana, and kind of how our story has unfolded ever since.
That's great. So I really want to hear a little bit about also your ideas about your mom, because I think it's so fascinating, right? We meet so many people who are donor conceived and so many people who have different ideas about what their siblings mean to them, what their donor means to them. And I think it's really interesting because we do see a lot of people who use donor conception who are in a 2-mom family or a single mom family, and they have these thoughts about what's it going to mean to have a dad or not have a dad who's a donor. And in your book and also in this podcast, you talked very eloquently about your feelings about your donor. And although you really like him and have good feelings about him, that there were people in your life that really took more of a parental role for you and kind of like a more fatherly role. And that really shaped your understanding about how you saw yourself and your relationship to your donor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a donor conceived individual, we all get to decide our own feelings about how we were raised, about what family means to us, about what role or relationship we would like to have with our donor, if that's an option. Jana and I are both lucky enough that our donor is very open and is willing to have that relationship with us. And so while it was a very, very nice and heartwarming experience meeting him, and while we stay up to date on each other's lives now and again, really, when I look back growing up and how I define family, and when I look back at the people that were in my life and who have influenced me the most, I can look back and definitely say it was my mom and it was my grandparents. And then it was my mom's best friends who were at our house week in and week out, friends' parents that really took an active role in supporting me throughout my life. So my definition of family is really expansive, and it's really that you can define who you think is your family. And typically, I feel like that's based on the people that have been in your life the most.
So well said. So interesting. And in your book, you talk a lot about that and a lot about the people who played such important roles for you. And I think a lot of people will be interested to know that you really cherished that your mom was this solo mom who took this, on this huge project of having two children by herself on with such gusto and so much heart, and really didn't shy away from any of it and was always open with you, and that you really value her for being that person that she is. And I think that that's so interesting for people and so valuable, I think, for people, parents to be, to hear that they could have a child who won't feel that they're lacking as much as they feel that they have all of these beautiful things, right? So I think that that's really helpful for everyone to know that there are these other experiences that people probably wouldn't even imagine there would be.
I mean, and I look at Jana's mom and my mom, and I think both of us, we love our moms and we think that they're the best and the coolest and the most badass women that we know. It's just such a gift to be able to have grown up watching someone take control of their own life, make independent decisions, really be their own champion, be extremely confident in the way that they're raising their family, and extremely proud of the family that they have built. And I think that just speaks volumes onto how John and I both were raised, and to how now we're both very confident in how we were raised in our family structures. And we each get to now make decisions about what kind of family we want to have and how we define family. So I think it just goes to show that, again, when you are able to take your life into your own hands, make your own decisions, live honestly and live your truth and share that with the rest of the world, I think that can be a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, so beautiful.
And I think that representation is so important for me growing up. And, when I got married and was thinking about, what would it look like if we had our own family one day, it definitely had that different tone to it. And Kiara and I have talked about that before of, oh, if I raise a family with someone, which is different than what my mom did and what Kiara's mom did, oh, I'll have to ask that other person about things. They'll have a say in how my child is raised. And my mother didn't have to worry about that. Our moms didn't have to worry about that as single mothers by choice. They didn't have to ask somebody else or, go ask your mom, go ask your dad. They had to make all those decisions, but also had the privilege to make those decisions themselves and be in a space where they had that autonomy. And so in that way, I think it's really shaped how we have entered this phase in our lives.
And so, Jonna, how did you and Kira meet?
Oh, I love this.
Mhm.
So I did the ancestry DNA, and I found some of our siblings through that. I wasn't looking to meet siblings. I actually wanted to know more about my ancestry back then in my early 20s. I didn't even know that you could find matches on these websites, but I felt so blessed that I had a match. And at that time, it said either this person's your grandma or they're your half sibling. And I knew those people were in their 20s as well. So I figured they weren't my grandma. And so I reached out, and it turns out there was a whole host of them that had met each other, that had been on a Facebook group, and very lucky that a couple of years later, Kiara and a group of us on a different DNA website then melded our groups and were able to meet up, and that's been really so beautiful.
Wow. So when you saw that, because I know, a lot of people have these fears about meeting all of these siblings. And I've had many people on this podcast, and I see many people in my practice who are very happy to have their siblings and have the relationships with their siblings. And it sounds like you guys have a nice relationship. But that initial feeling of looking at that and saying, oh my gosh, there's so many siblings there. How was that for you?
I think it really shifted my focus because growing up, it all was about people asking me about my dad or my donor. And no one ever asked me, oh, do you have siblings? It wasn't really something that I thought about because I had my own family and our chosen family, and we built that. And I could have 1,000, I could have absolutely none. And so, but you know that you have a donor, you know, genetically you have to have one. And that really shifted my focus away from the, okay, what if about my donor, what if, to the possibilities of connecting with people that are my siblings, that share my DNA, but also that I genuinely love being around. I think a lot of those fears before that were, okay, you know, what if these people are in jail? What if they're drug addicts? What if they are, you know, those what ifs for me personally, and I know not everyone feels this way and has these desires, but for me personally, it was so much better to know and be able to really pick and choose those of us who we want to see each other, we want to spend time with each other, we make it happen. And then there are those of us that aren't interested in that, and that's also very okay and very respected. And I'm so appreciative also that I personally got to do that as an adult because it meant something different to me when I had my own life and my own choices versus, you know, maybe when I was a little bit younger.
And how do you think that would have been different for you?
I, as an adult, had the opportunity to travel and to meet my siblings. And a couple of us that were on that initial group, I found out. And 2 weeks later, I put myself on a plane to Texas to go meet these strangers that I had spent a couple days talking to on, you know, on Facebook. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity to make those connections in person when I was younger. My mom's very supportive, but I would have had school or I would have had something going on. And so it was nice to be in a space where I was able to really dedicate my time and my emotional intelligence and my respect for the situation and others to really take time for that and make space for that. And I don't think I would have been personally mature enough for that when I was younger because I was so focused on that father figure or that donor. And again, I know that's not the same for everybody, but that was how, you know, how I felt at that time.
It is interesting too. I did the same thing when I found our sibling who I met first and found out about her, messaged her, and literally got on a plane 2 weeks later. So
Wow.
I have a very similar situation to Jonna. It is interesting. I get the question a lot, and I'm sure now, Jonna, you do too, from parents of, should I introduce my children to their donor siblings earlier? Because to be honest, for Jonna and I, that was not an option. I mean, there wasn't really a way for us to connect with our siblings back then. There was the donor sibling registry. It was kind of hard to connect with siblings, especially if you didn't have all the right information. So for me, you know, we can look back and say, you know, I would have wanted this, or you shoulda, coulda, woulda. So it is a hard decision as a parent to make. Am I doing the right thing for my child by introducing them and building these relationships at a younger age, or waiting a little bit until they're a little older so they can make the choice? I do know that some of our siblings were introduced via email and were pen pals over the years, which I personally would have loved if I had that option a long time ago, just to start building that relationship. Even to Jonna's point, most of our siblings live across the country. If you can't hop on a plane at that point to go meet your sibling, at least, you know, can you start building that relationship in another way? Or maybe actually, Shua, the first sibling that I met, she grew up about 30 minutes away from me. So if I did know about her earlier, if I was able to connect with her earlier, maybe we could have had that relationship from a young age. So it is a really hard and personal decision to make. Again, I'm someone who I am the more the merrier. I would have loved it. I've always wanted more siblings. I begged my mom for another sibling, a baby sibling. And I've always wanted more family around me. And then like Jonna mentioned earlier, we have some siblings who aren't as interested in a relationship. And there is power in choice. But I also think as kids get older, if you did make that decision to introduce them younger, if they stop showing interest or they say, hey, I don't really like Jimmy, or I really love Sierra, can we go hang out with her? Just like you would do with a neighbor kid or a cousin or someone else, listening to your child. And even at a young age, they're opinionated and they have thoughts and feelings on who they want to spend time with. So I do think there is still a way for parents to take cues from their kids of, is that something that they're interested in or enjoying?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I was just speaking with a woman who wrote a book about being donor conceived, and she said that the reason she chose the donor, she and her wife chose the donor that they did. Her name's Kate Davis, and she said that she was thinking about this donor conception sibling issue, and she wondered, in the scenario that you shared, what if that happened where I would have to fly across country and one of my kids really liked that and the other one really didn't. And then what do you do? And she was thinking about that as she was writing this book and had a lot of conflicts for herself. And she finally decided to use a known donor who's a close friend of the family anyway. So it would just be somebody that they know. It wouldn't be this kind of choice that you have to make. It's really a choice, right? Because that person isn't just kind of naturally in your life.
Yeah, my mom had that option. One of her friends had offered to
Mm-hmm.
be a known donor. And I think, again, such an important and personal decision. She ended up obviously going a not known donor, but one of my best friends, she has two kids from a known donor and then one from an unknown donor. And I would say it's also so much different these days, I say,
Mm-hmm.
than back in the 90s. At this point, there's a Facebook group that the parents can join and share photos of their kids. And I think that's also something that wasn't present back in the day. It was really more of a choice. Am I going to tell my child or am I not? And then are we going to engage? Are we not? And I think some of these decisions are being made and sometimes being forced to be made younger and younger in a child's life, which I know, adds that strain on parents sometimes.
It is so interesting, like how the landscape has changed for the better in a lot of cases. One, obviously, DNA testing being widely available, and you can't really promise anonymity anymore, which I
Right.
think is for the better. I mean, you have
Yes.
more access to information. Kids have more access to information about their donor, their siblings, etc. And it's also interesting because, yes, like Jonna mentioned, you do have an opportunity to potentially meet donor siblings or families that, conceived using the same donor as you a lot earlier. And again, even if it's sharing photos here and there, again, it's an option. Another thing is the resources available. There are children's books, there are adult
Mm-hmm.
books, there are parenting
Yes.
books all about donor conception. There's your podcast, Lisa. Like, this is
Thank you.
amazing. This
Yes.
is such a wonderful resource that neither one of our moms had. And again, they
Mm-hmm.
did a great job, but a lot of it was just going by the seat of your pants and doing the best that you could and making the best decision for your child that you can. And I know that, again, all that parents want to do is do right by their kids and try to make the best decision. And again, you may not have all the answers and you may not know exactly what's right, but the more that a parent can educate themselves, lean into their child, because again, every child, like you said, is different, and do their best.
Yeah. But it sounds like in this situation, both of you feel very similarly about your moms, about being donor conceived, about your siblings, about so many things.
Yeah. John and I love each other. We love our
So,
siblings. I'm upset that I probably won't be on our sibling trip this year because I will be giving birth and then I'll have a newborn when they're all meeting up. But no, Jonna, you can speak for yourself, but I know you and I share a lot of similarities in that fact of just how we feel about growing up and as well as just the relationships that we have with each other.
I do think it's such an interesting conversation on nature versus nurture. And because we do have so many siblings and so many families have, upwards of 30 siblings, more than they were promised to have. On one hand, there's this group of us that all think similarly, and a lot of us are in similar roles in healthcare or business, et cetera. But also thinking about, those of us that hang out and want to be with each other and are similar, is that because we come from the same background or the same area and have parents from similar backgrounds, Or is it because naturally, if you take a group of 30 people, there's bound to be 5 that have very similar
Yes.
interests and get along and
Yes.
are best friends anyways. And I think
Right.
that's a very interesting discussion. But Kiara and I have the same birthday. We're both from the Midwest. We love each other so
Wow.
much. Yes, same birthday, different year, but same birthday.
Yeah. We have the same
Wow.
ears. That was pointed out to me very quickly when I met Jana's
Mhm.
family and friends that, oh, you guys have the same ears.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, there we go.
But it is interesting because Kiara and I think 2 or 3 other of our siblings look so similar, and I feel that I do not. My mom has very strong genes, and so that's another thing that we got to, do your siblings look like you? Do you have photos of them? What do you? And so I love to see, it's the group of the gals with the blonde hair and with the, because you could really like open your iPhone with any one of them.
Yeah. Well, I think that that is so essential for people to think about because so often, and I talk a lot about this in my book and I counsel people about this every day. So often people look at the donor and say, I want that person. And here's proof right here, right? The same donor and two very different looking people, different personalities, different ideas. And you both have siblings and other people in your sibling group who feel very differently than you about contact, about your donor, about so just because you get that person for your donor, that doesn't mean you're getting him. You're getting genetics from the other genetic partner. You're getting genetics from his parents, from his mother, from his father, from all sorts of places. And so it really is a mixed bag. And it's hard to know which is nature and which is nurture. But certainly we see so often, and I don't know, I'm assuming you guys had this experience that we see so often with donor conceived siblings that you get to have this connection that is stronger because you don't have to go through the beginning stages of kind of warming up, getting to know each other. You kind of like automatically are like
Dive
cousins
in.
or, you
You
know,
just
right? You
dive
can just
in.
dive in, right?
And Kiara and I are very dive in people, anyways.
Yes.
You are?
Yeah. I think about when we went on one of our previous trips, and there was a sibling who we hadn't met before, met them for the first time. And we are like, okay, let's go. We're family now. Let's go. It's a very automatic. At that point, again, we had talked, we'd all agreed we're going to go on this trip. We all wanted to meet each other. And at that point, once you've had that initial conversation and you realize you're all on the same page, it really is like, okay, we're best friends now. Let's go.
Right. Not, and you wouldn't do that with somebody that just you met at work.
No. You could get there, you could build up to it, but again, I mean, we all have, again, friends or family friends that we've known for our whole lives that feel like family, but you take people and you're given this is my sibling, and it just means so
Like
much.
automatic, right?
It just means so much. And you're literally able to just dive in and be like, this is my sister. I know whenever we're all together, we'll go out to eat or to a bar and we'll say, we're sisters. These are all my siblings. And we love to confuse people because they're like, you're
That's so
all
funny.
related. Like, you're like sorority sisters. And we're like, no, we're all sisters. And it's just a special bond. And it's something that I'm so grateful for. And like Jonna said, it's our personality. We are both the more the merrier kind of people. We like to connect with people. We like to have those deep connections. And again, like you said earlier, Lisa, not if you have 2 children, one may want a connection with their donor siblings like myself, and one may not. Like the brother that I grew up with, same donor, same siblings. And he loved meeting them. He met them at my wedding. It's a great time. But there's very few people that he would travel for regardless.
Hmm.
And we just have very different ideas on what we want and the connections that we want to have. So it does really depend and come down to each individual person, but it
Yes.
is really special when you find people that do want to connect.
Yeah, that's lovely. And Jonna, what about you? Do you have siblings that you grew up with?
Yes, I have an adopted sister, and so she and I grew up together. And I think it was a really interesting conversation for her and my mom and myself because when I first found out that I had siblings, I was very thankful that my mom was so supportive. I didn't know if it was going to feel very difficult for her or, feel very much like, oh, well, that's not your family, or I'm so excited. And my mom really approached it from a place of curiosity and really saw it as, oh gosh, like I'm so excited. Tell me more about them. This is your family. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really meant a lot to me that we didn't shy away from that conversation. It was a little bit more tough for my sister who's adopted because she's adopted, she's not donor conceived, and that's a different conversation and
Yes.
a different way of thinking about family. But my mom was so excited for me to go, and now she comes on the trips and meets all the other
Really?
moms. And oh my gosh, they
Wow.
have such a good.
Our
They're planning
moms.
trips without us.
Yeah, our
They're
moms are besties.
they're
Really?
best
Oh,
friends.
that's
They
great.
hang out, and it's been really special to see them grow close and have those friendships that are based on something they might not have had back then. There weren't a lot of parents doing donor conception. If they were, it certainly wasn't talked about. And so they've had these shared life experiences. They've raised these children on their own. And so, they're women in business. They're able to, come together based on that shared piece as well, that their children are siblings.
Wow, that's amazing. Imagine your beautiful future. You're snuggling with your child. You feel so connected to them. Your friends and family are so happy, and you have everything that you've ever wanted. I want this for you too, but I want more than that. I want you to feel secure knowing that you've made the best decisions, not just short term, but long term for your future family. Wherever you are on your journey, whether you're choosing a donor, choosing a clinic, learning how to talk to your donor conceived child about their origins, all of these decisions will have wider implications for your future. And I want you to have the right resources so you can feel empowered and confident at this very important time in your life. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to Building Your Family. It's the only expert-guided platform designed for parents and parents-to-be using reproductive medicine. We provide unique strategies that you won't find anywhere else to make your path to parenthood smoother and more informed. And that's why our approach is about offering practical and actionable steps that you can use right now. Whether you're just starting out or already deep into your process, Building Your Family is here to guide you with expert advice, specialized education, stress reduction strategies, and a community to support you every step of the way. We can't wait to see you inside. What about you? How do you, because we talked a little bit about Kira's feeling about this, how do you feel about your donor, and have you met your donor?
I actually met him, I think it's 2 years ago now. As I said earlier, I was really focused on the donor piece when I was younger and have really shifted. I'm very thankful, and I call it what it was a best case scenario is he's willing to engage as much as you want. And then if not, that's cool. And it's really been the best case scenario. I had a lot of questions about my health and a lot of things that I wanted to know and know about his family and just learn more. My mom picked this donor because he had very similar traits to my mom and in hair color, background, generational, et cetera, favorite sports, et cetera. So it was I had that interest of, I know that this person was selected based on being like my mom, and I love my mom. She's super cool. So I might want to meet him. And so I think 2 years ago, he was in town near where I live now, and my husband drove down and to meet him. And it was a very surreal experience. I was so excited, and I had a little cry on the way because, anticipatory. I've never met this person who I call my donor, some would call my father, whatever you want to call this person. And then on the way home, and it was a great meeting, but I also realized he's just a guy. He's just a dude. He's just a guy. That's my mom's age. He's a stranger, really. And then on the way home, I had another little cry because I had never got to hug my dad before. And that was, to think about that was really, special for me. And I haven't met up with him since. And not because I don't want to or he doesn't want to, just because I love hanging out with my siblings and that's what I prioritize, and I'm good.
So you didn't have that experience of, like, with the siblings, just kind of being able to kind of target in on your relationship and feel like immediately there's this connection. Immediately you feel like there's this bond. You didn't have that with him.
No, not as much at first. Like I was really focused on the similarities and the physical similarities. Again, we all have the same ears, we have the same smile, one of our sides of our mouth goes crooked, have the same interests. One of his fully biological children and I have a lot of the same hobbies, which is cool. But when we're talking about the things that we like to do and how you might connect with another person, just like talking to any other 60-year-old dude, they have different hobbies than I do. They do different things. They like different TV shows and so I think it was a little bit easier with my siblings because we're from the same generation. We like the same things. We're making this decision. We all like to travel. We have a lot of the same interests and grew up with very similar backgrounds. And so just like it might naturally be easier to become friends with someone your age and less easy to become friends with a white heteronormative dude that's 60. I feel like that is kind of where we had that, but it was very pleasant, and I really enjoyed that opportunity, and very thankful that I had an opportunity to meet him once.
I think it's also like a level of respect thing too with siblings, right? None of us necessarily chose to be raised in this manner. I love the way that I was raised, but it's an immediate bond. You and I, we were donor conceived. We share a donor.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us are very careful with our donor because, yes, he did sign up for this. He donated, but he was also promised certain things that didn't end up happening, like anonymity. He actually did put his information out there to be found, and he is very willing to engage in a relationship. But he also has a wife and 2 kids that he has with his wife. And I think a lot of us are just acutely aware of that different dynamic of that relationship. And we want to respect him and his family as much as we can. So it is a little bit different. I think when I meet a sibling, I have no problem going deep, expressing all my feelings, kind of pushing myself onto them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't want that relationship or, it doesn't jive, that's okay. But I feel like when I had that similar experience as Jana, I felt that connection. I felt that awe of like, wow, you helped create me. And I'm so thankful for that. So thankful for this meeting. So thankful that you're in my life, even if it's, just keeping in touch. But I would never thrust my being, my relationship onto him. So I think it's a lot of us have that level of respect of his relationship necessarily in our lives. And also not everyone feels that way, but I feel like from a lot of our siblings, that's how we feel.
So the other siblings are feeling similarly because I know some people meet their donor and they have that magical connection immediately sort of feeling. But I guess you could also have that with, 2 parents, right? If you have 2 parents in a family, maybe you're really close with your mom or really close with your dad. Maybe you're very different than one of your parents, right? And so you don't have that same level of connection with one parent as you do with the other.
I think it's also different because not all of our siblings were raised by single moms. Some of them have parents, have fully formed family units, their chosen family, and they weren't told. Some of them weren't told at all before they found out, and not by their choice or their family's choice were they notified or found out. And so
Wow.
I think Kiara and I have, and other people that were raised and have an awareness of this, have that opportunity in that space to maybe have that connection, where it might be a lot more complicated for those that have different experiences or
Mm-hmm.
maybe find out later in life. There's a lot more complication there, but also to Kiara's point, being really respectful of their situation. So if we're out, Kiara's my sister, we're homies, we post, etc. But for our siblings that have, 2 parents or families that aren't open about this, I would never post on Facebook with my siblings, because not all of their friends and family are aware. Not all of them want their business to be everyone's business. And
Mm-hmm.
so it comes from a lot of respect and reflection and dialogue. Always checking, okay, is it okay if I post that we're together? Is it okay if I tag you in this? Is this caption okay? Making sure that everyone really feels comfortable about the situation as well.
That's so interesting. So, have you talked to a lot of people in your sibling group about those things? Like, do we feel comfortable posting stories together? Do we feel comfortable sharing this with other people? I know, Kiara, you just had a lot of siblings at your wedding.
Yes.
So, right. So it's not
Yeah.
like, all those people were together meeting your family friends, meeting each other. So there was obviously this kind of, and lots of pictures and dancing and all sorts of stuff. So I guess there is like some level of openness, at least with a group of you.
Well, one thing, they were all celebrities at my wedding. Everyone was very excited to get to meet them and point out. Well, one of my sisters specifically, that Jonna said earlier, that I look like a couple of them, but there's one in particular. I told her, I was like, you put on a wedding dress, half these people would not know the difference.
Wow. Wow.
Especially my husband's side of the family. I mean, I love them all, but from far away, you never know. But we usually have this conversation, especially anytime someone new joins the group, hey, this is like, usually it ends up us discussing how everyone feels about how they were raised, how do they feel about posting, how do they feel about sharing this information. Now with the siblings that we've known for years, we kind of know, like, I'm not going to tag this person in my post, or if I do, I'm going to caption it something else.
Hanging out with the squad, the friends are in town, the groupies.
With my book, that I put myself out there and basically then put my siblings out there as well. I very much asked, can I use your real name in the book? Do you want me to change your name? Your first name only, but your name. Do you want, when I post pictures, do you want me to tag you? Do you not want me to tag you? They all read the book before I published it to make sure that they were okay with what I had written and the experience that I had shared. So again, I think we all come at it from a level of respect and a level of,
Nice.
I love you, I respect you, and you may think differently or be more open or less open than I am. So how can I make this comfortable for you? But the one thing that I love is, on all our sibling meetups, wherever we go, whoever's hometown or place of that they're living that we're visiting, it is fun to meet their friends. So when all of us went to visit Jonna in Florida, and her friend, if we ever got to meet one of her friends that are there, they know that we're siblings. Everyone at my wedding knew that these were my siblings, and that's okay. Again, it just may not be that everyone wants us all bombarding their life in their hometown, walking around town, airing out their business. But again, it's a very personal and intimate decision. And we're all very respectful about it, but it is fun because I know John and I especially love to show off our family and our siblings and our times together. And I love that I can do that while still, protecting people that may not want to be in the scene.
That's so nice.
It's one of my favorite ways to freak people out. I said this weekend, actually, I'm at a conference and one of our siblings was in town and lives nearby, was in town, got to go to lunch with her, which was really nice. And I told one of my colleagues, oh yeah, I'm going out to lunch with one of my sisters. Oh, how many siblings do you have? I think like 26 now. I got to read the spreadsheet. And then, oh my goodness. And so it's funny when they ask about it, and it's funny when they don't ask too. And so that's just, I think, the type of people we are, is we're very open about it, and we want to talk about it, and we want to share, and we want to be on podcasts, and we want to, write books, and very thankful that we're able to share our story, because I really do feel very blessed in what we have.
It's fantastic. So nice. And so I guess I'm thinking, and maybe people in the audience are thinking this too right now, you're pregnant, Kara.
Yeah.
And so do you ever wonder about your genetics? You're going to have a baby, and your brother is fully genetically connected to you, right? But he's the only one. So now you're going to have this child who will also have your donor's genetics and your mother's genetics.
Yes.
Does that ever kind of simmer in your mind?
It is so interesting. Also, I do think we have one sibling that we have not met and don't actually know his name that does have children, but haven't connected with him. So I like to say that I'm having the first, niece or nephew, because I'm having a boy, of the family, and my son's going to have so many aunts and uncles and it's going to be amazing because they're not going to know, they're going to, get to know everyone, but they're going to think it's normal to just have, 26 plus aunts and uncles.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I think that, again, being donor conceived has given me such a different view on family structures. And I've been so excited to share that with my son. I've bought baby books that are about donor conception. So we can tell him, your daddy was raised by Grandma Beth and Grandpa John, and mommy was raised by Grandma Nikki. And, I don't know what we would call my donor, but he does live near my husband Jason's family. So I do hope to introduce my son to our donor. And I know that that's something that he would love as well. I did share the news that I was pregnant, and he was overjoyed and said that he would love to meet him when the time comes.
Wow.
So I love it. I'm so excited. Hopefully the next sibling meetup when he's a little bit older, I'm sure we'll all be walking down the street. Someone will be carrying the baby. It's going to be.
I want to wear the baby. I'm gonna weird, cool aunt vibes. I'm making a blanket. We're all so excited.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's so exciting. I see so many people in my practice who come to me because they're really worried. They say, what's going to happen to my child if they're donor conceived? Am I being selfish because I want to have a child? Maybe God doesn't want me to have a child, or maybe I shouldn't use donor conception because my children are going to not understand who their parent is. They're not going to feel like I'm the parent. There are all these fears, and they go on the internet and they see a lot of people who are very angry that they were donor conceived or feel upset about it. And they say, I can't do it. I'm not going to have children if this is what it's going to be. And they come to me heartbroken about it.
It's just important to remember that the internet is a scary place, and it's where people turn to vent and find community for their pain. And I get that. You want to find someone else who has that shared experience if you're going through a trauma or you've had something bad happen to you. But it's the most negative voices and the most angry individuals that are speaking the loudest. Most of our siblings, even like Jana, someone who's completely happy and confident in her donor conception identity, maybe she's not sharing her voice as much because she's content, she's confident, she's happy. So it's just important to remember that I would even say the majority of donor conceived people are happy and healthy and confident. And again, it's just the voices that are out there speaking upon these subjects are because they've had a trauma or they weren't told and they have some negative feelings that they want to share, some cautionary tales. And I think cautionary tales are important, but it's again important to remember there are also so many happy endings and so many best case scenarios that can also be shared with parents.
Yes.
And as we're thinking about even our siblings who might have had what we would maybe classify, or maybe they would classify or have classified as negative scenarios, or they weren't told, it was really hard on their families, but some of those are our closest siblings now. So just because it's hard at one point or it's difficult at one point for a child or for a family doesn't mean it's always going to feel that way. It's not always going to be tough. And to Kara's point, the internet is an echo chamber. And so what you're putting out there, you're receiving. But the more compassion that we can have, the more positive stories we can share. The family members that we have, the siblings that we have that were super positive about it right away, we've done phenomenally. And the ones that weren't super positive about it right away are also doing very well and are very well adjusted now and are very happy about it, and their families talk about it. And so even though it might not be an immediate thing, but I think the worst negative point that we've seen in our story with our siblings is when they find out on accident, or they'll reach out and say, hey, I see that we're half siblings. Is maybe my dad donated? And I have to tell them, you need to go talk to your family. I'm probably not the best person to have that conversation with you. And I've had to have that conversation with people because they didn't want to ask their families. They didn't want to talk to their families about it. And that's really hard on siblings that do know, to really have to navigate those conversations. I don't know you as a person. You know we're related. I know we're related. You might not know how yet, and you might be really angry when you find out. And so having those conversations with your family is so important. And, getting to a place where you and your family can, make the best out of that situation and have that understanding has been really important for us and for our siblings that maybe struggled with it at first.
Right. Even like Kerry Washington says in her book, she loves her parents so much, and she knew that they were told not to tell. And so she forgives them, and they have a very close relationship. So sometimes, even when there's a difficult scenario, you can bridge that gap and get past it and repair those wounds, just like we repair lots of wounds in life. But there are plenty of people who have good stories from the get-go, and you're two of them. And I'm so grateful to have met you both and that you're sharing your story out there, because we need more good stories like yours.
Yes. And now that, again, the norm is to tell and tell early and often and have that conversation and read your kids' books that represent your
Hmm.
family structure, I'm really hopeful that there will be less negativity and less, traumatic experiences for donor conceived people, so that the community will have more positive and happy voices to share their stories.
Yes, I think there will be. It's so fantastic how close you guys are and how much you have really been able to be so sensitive to each other's needs, everybody's desires, been very respectful, and you have such a lovely connection. And even though you have all these siblings, you've really been able to, embrace it and have such a wonderful connection. And as you guys probably know, there are a lot of people who don't feel that way. They feel like it's
Mhm.
very stressful to have all these siblings, and you've really embraced it. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today. Is there anything that I'm leaving out of the story, or anything that you think that maybe a prospective parent might want to know?
I guess my final words are that your kids are going to be okay, regardless of if they think that you made a wrong choice in one of your parenting decisions related to donor conception or not. I'm sure we
Mhm.
can all look back and say, "Ooh, I wish, my mom didn't yell at me for this one time, or I told me about this." But all I can say is John and I have both leaned into the positive, wonderful relationships that have been presented to us. And it is just an immediate connection that we've been able to create and hold on to. As some friends we have lifelong, some friends come in and out of our lives, but our siblings are truly forever. And that is such a wonderful gift. And I, again, am really just so proud of how far the donor conception community has come, all the resources out there, and just encourage parents to keep listening to donor conceived people and keep listening to resources that are available. And their kids are going to be just fine. I know as
Mhm.
a soon to be mom, there's a lot of things to worry about, a lot of things to be nervous
Yes.
about, but you can't let, the fears and the worry control your life. You got to do the best that you can and keep living.
I think my final word to that is, as parent, to not be afraid of those tough conversations that you're going to have. And it's maybe easier if you're the sole parent and there's might be, somebody tells your child there's something missing and there's natural opportunities to have that conversation. It's tough no matter what, but if you're, a multiple parent household and there's those natural opportunities don't arise. From what I have seen and experienced with our group and some other groups, is that the kids that have had the choice or had those tough conversations, regardless of the age, but find out through their parents instead of a DNA test or somebody in the
Yes.
family tells them, they've fared much better emotionally.
Mhm.
And because those tough conversations were had at some point. And whether those people choose to engage or not, those kids have a choice, those adults have a choice. And that was presented in a very loving way from their parents. When it came as a surprise to the child or to the adult, their worldviews took a long time to reconnect. And even if the outcome is the same, just really encouraging families to not shy away. I know my family personally would prefer just not to talk about anything because we're Midwest nice and tough conversations are hard to have, but really just not shying away from that, because in the long run, I really feel that it's better to know.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And research has showed that over and over again to us. And we learned that 50 years ago in the adoption community, and for some reason we had to learn it all over again. But transparency is everything. And lots of people, as you said, think, oh, I don't have to tell my child because I'm a single mom or part of a gay family, and so it doesn't matter. They'll figure it out. It's always better, as you said, if it comes from the parent, if the parents are telling the children directly, it makes such a huge difference. You don't want to wait for your child to ask. It's so important to be able to share that narrative and share it early. And your child, as we can see right here, will be comfortable with it, and that will be part of their identity, and they can be very happy people, as the two of you are. And I'm so happy for the two of you to share your story with us and to be able to tell everyone this wonderful experience of being able to connect in a way that people just wouldn't expect. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. This is wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
And for all of you out there, please reach out to both of them if you have any questions. Can you tell everyone where we can find you and where people can reach out to you with questions?
Yes. So you can reach out to me on Instagram. My username is @KiaraRayshu, so my full name. You can also go to kiaraRayshu.com, and that has links to podcasts I've done, videos, or my book as well.
Great.
And if you'd like to reach out to me, my Instagram handle is @JOHNNA_CP.
Well, thank you so much for coming today and sharing all of these beautiful stories with us. And for everyone out there, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Your time is so precious, and it's so important to use it in a way that's going to be helpful and useful for your future family, for your confidence, and for everything that you want to be in your life. It's so important for you to feel secure in becoming a parent through donor conception. As you can see here, this is a wonderful result. So thanks for coming. Please press subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Hi, it's Lisa Schumann. I hope that you enjoyed that video, and I hope it helped you. And if it did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, because that's how we keep going. It's really important to us. And if you liked it, you might like this one.